gentlemen, the first episode of 2013. Hope you guys had a great holidays, but we're back at it with all of the NFL news, the coaching carousel that's sweeping the league, the playoff recap, and what legacy does Ray Lewis leave behind. All this and more tonight on NFL Goal Line.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be or however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. We're here live on Spreaker.com in affiliation with National Sports. Thank you guys for joining us. This is Nick Rice alongside Phil Nunziata. We had a very action-packed last few weeks. We weren't able to be a part of NFL Goal Line the past few weeks. We've had a lot of stuff to get done, but we are here, and it is Wild Card Weekend. But first off, it started off on Black Monday, most notably. That was last weekend. But now we've had a lot of different coaches make their way onto new teams. First of all, most notably, the big signing in Kansas City. Real quick, Phil. Andy Reid over to the Chiefs. That was the first signing of the new head coach over there for any team. First off the board is Andy Reid, former Eagles coach. You know a lot about a guy that's been part of Philadelphia for 14 years. What kind of a difference maker can Andy Reid be immediately on that Kansas City squad?
Well, after having the same guy as my favorite team's head coach since I was 6 years old, it didn't surprise me that he was the first coach to get a new job after being fired from his old one this year. I think it's a great move by Kansas City. Personally, I don't exactly know what made Andy Reid attracted to Kansas City over the other places that were talking to him. Because, honestly, I don't think the roster that they have really complements the things that Andy Reid does. But at the same time, a lot of that roster isn't worth keeping. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them kind of strip down their shop and kind of start over from scratch. And that's something Andy Reid's used to doing, is building teams up from scratch.
Kansas City has the number one overall pick. Perhaps a quarterback is in the making. If they don't go for a quarterback, I believe their 2013's year is over as well. I mean, Matt Castle's not the answer. Brady Quinn's not the answer. Nobody on that team is the answer, especially at quarterback. Similar situation. Now, the Buffalo Bills signed Fitzpatrick to a long deal last year, making a 5-year commitment to him. Now they have a new head coach that has to deal with an average quarterback with an above-average deal. This is Doug Marrone, now the new head coach for the Buffalo Bills. Now, outside of some college success, if even that at all, the signing of Doug Marrone seems not only at an inopportune time for this team, but also an unproven coach that perhaps, he's not even at the level of Chip Kelly and some of these other guys. I'm scratching my head too, Phil. Why Doug Marrone to a team like Buffalo that has run through 9 or 10 head coaches ever since they were successful early on in the 90s?
Yeah, Doug Marrone was one of those situations where I didn't understand the fascination with him, former head coach Syracuse. They had a pretty good year this year, upsetting West Virginia, Geno Smith, and Mountaineers in the bowl game this year. And the New Era Pinstripe Bowl, it was a game that was, snowing. It definitely catered to the northern Syracuse team. I don't have anything negative to say about the guy, but I never understood what the huge fascination was about him. I guess sometimes change is good. I'm not saying this guy can't do the job, but I know nothing about him or nothing in his resume tells me that this was the guy that had to go out and get. This is a year where two of the biggest names on the market, both college coaches, Chip Kelly and Bill O'Brien, staying at their respective schools. Bill O'Brien committing long-term to Penn State, and Chip Kelly really just admitting that emotionally he was not ready to leave Oregon. He felt he had unfinished business there. So I think it was just maybe the desire to reach into the college ranks and pull out somebody. Again, I'm not saying this is a bad coach, but it kind of shocked me how big of a stir this got of a guy that overall is relatively unproven.
Well, the National Football League is a league where you always want to get younger, not only with players, but it looks like head coaches as well. From the management department over the past few years, statistically, not only at head coaching positions, but management over the past few years, they've dropped down 2 years in age. Just an interesting stat there. Another interesting scenario where not only, but on the other side of the ball here, Chip Kelly, for a while now, just last night, Phil, you know a lot about this, Alabama against Oregon, not really going Chip Kelly's way. Interesting how the night before that big game, he decides to stay with the Oregon Ducks for one more year, apparently unfinished business. I'm not a big fan of this decision because of how successful he is at the college ranks, and he's already at the age of 60, so he isn't exactly a new guy in that system. And not only that, but his spread system doesn't really fit to an NFL pro-style offense. He'll have to adjust it to the pro game. I can see why he would want to refine that at the college ranks one more year and perhaps unfinished business win the actual national championship game next year. But Chip Kelly staying at the college ranks. This is back-to-back years where he's turned down NFL jobs to stay at college. I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of this decision, but why keep going with the college ranks when you only have so many years left on your resume? He's already 60 years old, turning 61 for next year. Why stay at college when you can have a big-time opportunity in the pro ranks?
Well, the way I look at this, people had asking me, friends I work with, and then people I'm just around on a daily basis. Chip Kelly for a while seemed like the leading candidate to land the Eagles' job. And the way I looked at it, you're right. Maybe the spread offense, his version of it wouldn't work in the NFL. And maybe that was a smart move by Chip Kelly, knowing that he doesn't not have what it takes, but his philosophies wouldn't translate to the NFL. But I had always said, if there was a team with the talent to even attempt such a thing, it would be a team like the Eagles. Speed everywhere. If he was going to have an NFL version of the Oregon Ducks, it would have to be the Philadelphia Eagles, which would have also led to the question, do they keep Michael Vick as someone who would fit into that system? Obviously, all these questions are null and void as Chip Kelly is going to stay in Oregon. The thing of it was, the two leading candidates other than staying in Oregon were the Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles. Both teams at different points said we are stopping pursuing Chip Kelly when he went to interview the other team, which made me think either he wasn't fully interested or neither of these teams thought he was the guy. Turns out both teams could have easily been interested in him, but the dark horse of it was Oregon booster Phil Knight, and for those of you who don't know, one of the founding members of Nike brand, big booster of Oregon. He's the one that put a lot of effort into convincing Chip Kelly to stay, obviously being successful as he remains an Oregon Duck. They won the Fiesta Bowl this year. Big win for them, trying to move on to the national championship next year. Big things for Chip Kelly. Me personally, it was good to see someone not just take the money and run with it.
Yeah, going from the college ranks to the NFL is a whole different game. You see so many college coaches. It took Pete Carroll his second time to be successful in the National Football League. It's a different game, and not only a different game, but guys that are successful in this game, everyone in the NFL wants to win. But there are certain coaches, certain players that just want it more than everyone else, and that term is thrown around more often than it really should. But these certain coaches, there's only about 4 or 5 in the league that are really elite, have their team successful every year. It's because of the fact that they are such big workaholics. Chip Kelly's that kind of guy, but he just doesn't see the NFL right now to be his answer. The money will be drastically increased, but the other thing is, being part of the NFL, there are some guys, let's take an example, Bill Belichick. He's a guy, first of all, in his years in Cleveland, before moving to New England, he started off 5-10 in his first 2 years. This NFL is just a different style game where it isn't just one or two answers for your franchise to turn it around. It's a whole bunch of different variables. This could be more than just Chip Kelly wanting to stay in his hometown of Oregon and not really finding interest in the jobs that are available. This could be a lot more than that. And Chip Kelly is a very successful coach, but the other thing is, it's just the fact that he's such a workaholic makes me believe that he can still, even with that style offense, can still be successful in this game. And let's look ahead to next year. If Chip Kelly does indeed want to promote himself to the NFL ranks, teams like the New York Jets and Carolina Panthers, teams that are keeping with their coach for one more year, I believe on their way out after this season, they could be on the hot seat for a new head coach for a guy like Chip Kelly. And look at those two teams with, first of all, Cam Newton, a similar style that would fit that offense. And let's just look for Carolina. Maybe Chip Kelly's wanting to wait another year and look at his options. He believes that the options will open up for him more next season.
Well, I don't know that his reason for staying was that he was unhappy with the teams pursuing him. I think if he wanted to be in the NFL, not to put any hate towards any Cleveland fans that might be listening, but from a head coaching perspective, I think Philadelphia would have been a much more attractive option than Cleveland, for this year, being the two teams that were really after him. I think if he really wanted to get to the NFL at any time in the near future and give it a try, I think he would be the coach of the Eagles right now. I don't think it's a situation that he doesn't think it was a right fit. I think he just knows where he belongs. And, some guys are more emotional than others. Things mean more to them. Maybe he just wants to make Oregon as good as they can be, and he is okay with his legacy being a great college coach and not going to the NFL.
Other head coaches around the National Football League, we're looking around the coaching carousel here. Bruce Arians, the former offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, he was promoted to head coach. Also, another side note here, just another cancer, similar style illness for Bruce Arians. Hopefully he'll be okay. He was sidelined not only sidelined, he was in the hospital for the Colts in their loss over the Baltimore Ravens. And really quick before we go to the break, we'll have more on this later on in the broadcast, but the legacy of Ray Lewis, I've just been so impressed over the past 17 years of a guy like Ray Lewis who has come through time and time again for his football team. Here was what he had to say in his last game as a Baltimore Raven at home, his last game in Raven Stadium. Here's his post-game press conference following 13 tackles and a victory over the Indianapolis Colts.
Ray Lewis, what a remarkable return, a victory for the Ravens today. How do you put this day into words?
You know what? The only way you can really put it into words is simply by saying God is just amazing. His timing is everything. His will is everything. And for me to come out here and be represented by my city, by my fans, and for my teammates to play with their hearts out, it got emotional. It got emotional for me to see my kids, to know that I started something at 17 years old, and now I'm here ending it. And I started here and I'm ending here. And there's no greater reward than for me to take this last victory lap around to see my team. Because we have a vision. We're not trying to end here. This is just my last game ever playing in Raven Stadium. And it's the most awesome thing you can ever ask for in any professional career.
Well, Ray, I know it had to be just, I can't even imagine the emotions you went through today playing, but let me just look at it a different way. A lot of people thought that, okay, you're coming back, but you're not going to be close to being effective on the field. 13 tackles, everything else. Tell us about your play on the field today.
You know what? I think that's the thing that's always motivated me so much, Phil. It's just that, you always hear what you can't do and what you won't do. And I knew that I bust my behind to get back to make this last run with my teammates. And for me to come out here to play with a torn tricep, I was supposed to be out for the year. That's what man says. But God has a different plan. And today his will was fulfilled. And I just want to give him all the glory, man. Just to have me here appreciating this moment, knowing I was able to walk off a field and fight with my team with all the circumstances I was up under.
13-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first-team All-Pro, Super Bowl MVP, a winner of the Super Bowl 36 with the Baltimore Ravens. At his 17th year, his final run going at it with a torn triceps just a few months ago. How impressive has this been, Phil? It's been such a long ride for Ray Lewis, his final journey. You have to imagine what his family and his total emotions feeling for family and friends of Ray Lewis, and just how many hearts he's touched and the kind of impact he's made, not just as a football player, but as a person. 17 years going at it. Final thoughts on reactions on his final ride as a Baltimore Raven.
Well, after hearing that interview, it's pretty hard to follow that, but I guess I'll do my best. I think my favorite thing about Ray Lewis is just the raw emotion and passion that he played with. There are guys that are, professionals, they appreciate where they are in life. They appreciate that they're playing professional football. But this is a guy that I think people just want to be around, someone that they want to lead them. He's a born leader. Ray Lewis, when he says something, you just listen. You might not even agree with what it is, but the way he says it, you just have to listen. I don't think, it's if there's someone else, I might be forgetting him right now, but not many people have the same love for the game that Ray Lewis does. Here's a guy, not always the most popular, having his problems with the law early in his career, getting past that. Here's a guy that's going to go down, by the time, I'm older, I'll be able to say he's one of the greatest players I've ever seen live play football. People from the generation before us talk about seeing Jerry Rice play, seeing Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, playing in person. One of the guys that we're going to look through when we're old is we got to see Ray Lewis play live.
Very impressive, this guy. I mean, and the other thing is, after the game, there was some controversy around dancing his traditional Ray Lewis dance. His last game as a Baltimore Raven in his home stadium, doing the Ray Lewis dance after the game. And there were some really negative comments. Reggie Wayne, Colts receiver, obviously very frustrating of a performance to lose the way that they did after such an impressive season. So much adversity they went through, 10-3 without Chuck Pagano as the head coach, with cancer, the whole 9 yards. They've gone through so much as a team, perhaps the most tight-knit locker room. To lose in the kind of fashion that they did, offense wasn't there, the defense just didn't make enough plays. And to have, your opponent, Ray Lewis, I think Reggie Wayne's looking at it from a different point of view. He's just another player. This is a guy in another dimension, another level. But doing the Ray Lewis dance after every quarter, doing the victory lap and everything, I mean, it's in one case I want to agree with it, and I really do in this instance. It's one scenario like this. But I do in a case see where Reggie Wayne is... I see his point here, where this can't just be this has to be kind of controlled in a sense, Why? I mean, there's already so much emotion in this game. Why just showboat? I mean, this is just a playoff game. This isn't the Super Bowl or anything. I mean, just real quick. I mean, Phil, what are your thoughts on this post-game kind of controversy? I don't think this will really go anywhere, but, I mean... Why, after the game, so much controversy? I could see it either way, but, I mean, Ray Lewis after the game doing a dance in the middle of the field.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think it's over now that it's, they've left the field. I agree. Ray Lewis didn't do anything. If this was maybe on the Colts' home turf, maybe I'd understand that, but if that was the case, this wouldn't be as big of a moment for Ray Lewis. I understand, the Colts going through an emotional ride of themselves. I'm sure they're hurt, slightly disappointed on the way their offense, performed, and they're walking off their field after one of the most emotional seasons. Watching this game, I didn't want anyone to lose because you can't cheer against Ray Lewis being his last go-around. You can't cheer against the Colts after the season they've had. There's nobody that you want to lose this game. So you look over after a tough loss, after an emotional season, you see Ray Lewis doing this dance. Yeah, I could see why Reggie Wayne would be a little ticked. I get it. I understand. I don't think that says anything about Reggie Wayne as a person. Again, he's a veteran too. His time is going to come in the next couple seasons, I'm sure. I'm totally fine with everything that happened there. I mean, again, Ray Lewis isn't doing this in a a manner to make fun of the other team. He's doing it in a way with it's just a thing where I get it. I don't think anybody's wrong in either situation, and I think it's already over and done with.
And one other side note here, Ray Lewis, he has the he has the brace on his arm, his entire arm. He has a face mask with more bars than a jail cell. I mean, he looks more like Darth Maul to me than an NFL linebacker. I mean, just pointing that out there. But we'll be right back with the NFL goal line here with Nick and Phil. We'll be taking a look at the next round of the playoffs, divisional weekend. Here we have 4 marquee matchups here, and the winner moves on to the 2 conference championship games. We're getting closer and closer, ladies and gentlemen, to Super Bowl 47. We'll bring all the recaps and previews of those matchups, and also who do we think will win the Super Bowl, and much, much more. We have the coaching carousel, more on that, and much more. We are just getting started here on the NFL goal line with Nick and Phil. Quick 30-second break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this. The Green Bay Packers rank in the top 5 in both offense and defense throughout the regular season. Why is nobody looking at a team that is 1 win away from the conference championship? The NFL goal line rolls on with Nick and Phil. Thank you guys for joining us. The NFL goal line continues here. We'll take a look at the wild card games and also take a look at the divisional matchups. And then we'll also look at some other key marquee headlines around the National Football League. We start off with the AFC. Real quick breakdown of the 2 matchups there on Saturday and Sunday, the AFC. First of all, taking a look at a team in Houston that perhaps I think was the most unimpressive victory out of these 4 teams to move on to the divisional round. Now they take on the New England Patriots for the divisional round of the playoffs. 19-13, your final score. And in a game where only one team was able to score one offensive touchdown, it was perhaps the most boring game as well. I couldn't really bear to watch a team in Houston that couldn't rack up very much yards at all on the offensive side. Your reactions on a game where I don't believe Houston really won the game. If I want to go here, I would say more that Cincinnati kind of let that game slip away. 0 for 9 on third downs is just the beginning of the kind of struggles they'll have in the offseason trying to fix their offensive problems. And the fact that Marvin Lewis, another side note here, is still the head coach of the Bengals, in my mind, just blabbers me. The Bengals are 0-3 in postseason play. Tack on another loss here. 19-13, your final. Was this more Houston defeating a great team that won 8 out of their last 9 to go into the playoffs? Or was this a team that just was the beneficiary of some key breakdowns on Cincinnati's side?
Well, I'll give you one better. In my opinion, I think Houston was just more accustomed to playing bad football than the Bengals. I think both teams played bad. The Bengals just played a little bit worse. Houston, they've had sloppy moments like this in the past and found a way to win games, whereas with Cincinnati, when they don't play very well, they're not usually able to pull it off. So I think it's just a difference of, Houston being slightly more battle-tested, finding ways to win even when the offense isn't clicking. And I think you definitely saw the difference there.
Matt Schaub, 262 yards passing, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Just a little bit better than Andy Dalton, who was under 50%, 127 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Going into next year, now the Bengals are eliminated from playoff contention, offensively only scoring 6 points on that side of the ball. What is the concern for a team that has, not from this game, but from the season, has their franchise quarterback? I believe Andy Dalton is an above-average quarterback. You're not going to find too many guys better than him. They have an elite wide receiver who, until the third quarter, didn't even have a catch in this game. That's also another issue they'll have to address in the offseason. Have more guys around A.J. Green. What is the notable missing piece that the Bengals need to fill during the offseason in a game where they only scored 6 points on offense?
Well, I think, as far as an offensive thing, their defense is a pretty solid defense. They had a pick 6 on the first drive of the game. But as far as offense goes, just give them a little bit more weapons. I mean, A.J. Green is by far, the biggest weapon on that team. I think they did a very good job, getting Jarvis Green-Ellis there to help with the offensive weaponry. But I think he's got to stock up a little bit more. If you're going to win a championship, Jordan Shipley can't be your number 2 receiver. Like, you have to do more about it. Maybe their tight end situation isn't terrible. But overall, I think Andy Dalton just needs, when teams play the Cincinnati Bengals, if you stop A.J. Green, give him another guy, to make them pay for it. I mean, all the great teams, even if it's not a star receiver, look at teams like the Lions necessarily. Not that they had that great of a year, but in few games where they'll stop Calvin Johnson, guys like Nate Burleson before he got injured would step up and make the difference. I think that's what you need. You need to make it so that if you're going to double team A.J. Green the whole game, they can pay for it on the other side.
Yeah, and the other thing is, whether it's free agency or the draft, they do have to improve that receiving core. And they also can't really rely on a 6th-round Alfred Morris situation where they could pick up a running back. But some way they need to find their running back situation as well. You see teams that are elite in the playoffs, they're able to run the football. Why is Seattle so impressive in the postseason right now? Why are they a hot team in the NFC? They can run the football, similar to San Francisco, similar to New England, and similar to Denver. Those teams are the top 2 seeds in the conference. So, also, I find it a similar situation with Minnesota. They have to mask their problems on offense. They don't have one receiver, and then the rest are kind of poor. They have a lot of average receiving cores. But, I mean, the difference between a team like Minnesota and Green Bay, you just see it. You see in the playoffs, you see the passing game just not as talented. You see receivers that just can't get past Green Bay's secondary. And that's just because there isn't the kind of, they just don't have the talent there. The guys that they have starting, they have the number 1, Michael Jenkins. And then after that, they have Percy Harvin. But it's just kind of, after that, it's a lot of guys picking up off the street that you expect to a win in the playoffs, which really isn't the case. Adrian Peterson has masked so many offensive problems on that side. Same question I throw at you, Phil. What does Minnesota have to do to improve their team in the offseason? I see their defense already elite in the NFL, a playoff-ready defense, just their offense missing some key pieces, most notably at quarterback.
Well, I think the difference is, Christian Ponder is a great quarterback. He's a guy that I've seen, through college, through his days. I've seen him play live. I've been to Doak Campbell Stadium at Valley Bowden Field, and I've watched Christian Ponder play. The thing of it is, it's very similar to the other situation. You need more weapons. You brought up the Green Bay Packers. There is not a single receiver on that team that if you double him, there's not someone else that'll make it pay. They have Randall Cobb. They have Jordy Nelson. They have, Greg Jennings. They have all these guys that you can't double up one. You have to play them straight up and see what happens. If they have a 5-wide set, Aaron Rodgers has no problem throwing the ball to any of those 5 guys. All the way down to their fullback, John Kuhn probably has more touchdowns than a couple of slot receivers on other teams. This is just a team. They trust everybody that steps on that field on an offensive snap to make a play. Nobody's on there just because they don't have someone else. I think the Packers, as far as receiving core goes, have to have the best in the league.
Honestly, yeah, Green Bay, you saw the difference in a offense of Green Bay's caliber, easily scoring 24 points in the wild card game with a great defense. I want to give my hats off to a team that really drafted well in the offseason. They have a group of cornerbacks in Minnesota that are really impressive, and a young Harrison Smith at safety as well. Very talented secondary there in Minnesota. And then Chad Greenway, leading or second in the league in tackles as well. Very impressive defense there. But I also want to battle your point real quick, Phil, on the fact that Minnesota has their quarterback set. I don't believe Minnesota has their quarterback of the future. I know Joe Webb was thrown in the lineup, but Christian Ponder or Joe Webb, I don't believe are the quarterbacks of the future of Minnesota. With a team that was second in the NFL, all-time NFL history, running the football in Adrian Peterson, to be bottom 10 in the league in total offense. I mean, how bad was your offensive passing game during that stretch there? Because I know that Christian Ponder doesn't have an elite receiver or, in fact, any other targets really to go to outside of a Kyle Rudolph, who is still progressing as a tight end. I still don't believe Christian Ponder is the answer for the future. And I mean, I don't know if it's entirely that receiving core, but how much blame can you put on an offensive quarterback? I know it's his second year, still has room to improve, but frankly, I don't see the progression or, in fact, the talent that I would like to see out of a franchise quarterback.
Well, I think this is a team that has to grow together. Like you said, it's a very young team. Aside from Percy Harvin and Kyle Rudolph, it's a whoever offense. They throw them out there. I don't know how much, as you said, they're pulling guys off the street to play wide receiver for the, wide receiver for the Vikings. And how much chemistry can you really have with these guys when it's a revolving door at wide receiver? And you can see the difference. I mean, Percy Harvin had a point where he was an MVP candidate of this year between his return game ability and what Christian Ponder was doing with him connecting in the passing game. There were maybe 3 guys out of the 8 or 9 receivers, and I'm counting running backs as well. There's maybe 3 or 4 guys that Christian Ponder probably has a connection with and can go to, at any given moment and have confidence in him. I think it has a lot to do with that. Just the fact that this team is not gelled as well as some of the other ones, and it showed against Green Bay.
You mentioned guys pulling off the street. I was actually, both of us agree the receiving core isn't really there. Reading off the receivers on this team real quick here, the only guys that were even able to make a catch in this game include Michael Jenkins with 3 receptions in this contest, and they also have Percy Harvin, who wasn't even able to suit up for this game. But then they have a guy, Jerome Simpson, first thing you think of, the leap in the end zone, and then obviously Kyle Rudolph, with 2 catches as well, and then Adrian Peterson. Those are the guys that were able to make any sort of catches in this game. Obviously, the receiving core is a need for improvement in the offseason. Any moment now, we should have our caller of the day, Robert Dieters, another man who is active part of national sports, and he should be on us very shortly to be talking about the NFC picture around the National Football League. Thank you guys for joining us. Our call-in number is 951-515-4552. Also message us on Facebook. Nick and Phil are online on National Sports' very own NFL Goal Line Facebook page. We hopefully will have Robert Dieters very shortly, to be talking NFC right now. But just recapping the other game in the wild card picture, Seattle and Washington. We have Robert Dieters on the line talking NFC West right here. What was your thoughts on a team falling back 14-0, then figuring out a way to pull it out in the Seattle Seahawks? Robert, thanks for joining us here. You're live on NFL Goal Line here. Was this more of a team that really was the beneficiary of a quarterback situation that really was unsettled the entire second half? Robert Griffin finally pulled out with an injury in the fourth quarter. Was this more of an offensive struggle for Washington, or did Seattle really buckle down after starting up 14-0?
I think it was a situation, it's always said, defense travels well. I think Washington definitely got out to a huge start, but once they calmed down, they got to play their game. They slowed it down. They prevented Washington from really scoring much. On top of the situation that we've been talking about all week, on SportsCenter and whatnot, RG3 not being 100%. After a while, they were able to slow it down and play their game. It's all about momentum. Seattle was just more prepared for that situation, and they didn't give up after being down in that 14-0 hole. That's a big deal. They could have easily crumbled. And Washington could have just played it safe and coasted through the rest of the game. I think Seattle did a very good job. I was very impressed the way that they came back and found a way to win after being down 14-0.
And Robert Dieters was supposed to join us here. We actually have some technical issues with Dieters, but very impressive after I'm watching this game, 14-0, and I see an unnecessary roughness penalty hitting Robert Griffin way late after the penalty. I see a team that's falling apart in the first half. And then Pete Carroll takes that team by the throat and really turns this game around by himself. I see a team that I didn't really see this entire season, a team that was really undisciplined and was making zero plays. I mean, they gave up a boatload of yards in the first quarter, and then they were able to buckle down. We have Robert Dieters hopefully on the line. Robert, can you hear us?
Yeah, Nick, I can.
Okay, cool. All right. Another situation, part of this wild card game here. What were your thoughts on midway through the fourth quarter, keeping Robert Griffin in for so long before it was just kind of he had to limp his way off the field? He completely fell apart there as of late. What were your thoughts on Shanahan keeping in his star quarterback when you have a backup in Kirk Cousins that is a capable quarterback in this league that was just put on the sideline for, in my mind, a little too long?
Well, in this situation, yes, this has been a huge topic in the NFL, and yes, kind of talked about this so much. It was a good decision that Mike Shanahan kept RG3 in. Well, the answer to your question is, when you look at it, I don't think there was really a positive in it, because the first quarter pretty much was all he did, and he hurt himself. But you still want to keep him in, which I thought you're just risking more injury. And now he has to get surgery now because he tore his LCL, I believe. So now, Kirk Cousins could have gone in that game. I think he would have done great, in my opinion. But we didn't know because he never went in. So I don't think Mike Shanahan should have put RG3 back in.
You know a lot about the San Francisco 49ers, Robert, and the controversy around that team, and we've talked about this before, is the fact that they seem to address perhaps the last issue for the Niners, which is getting a free agent kicker off the block at the end of the regular season, picking up Billy Cundiff. A guy that in David Akers also, he's replacing apparently, who are they going to start? That's the big question for San Francisco. But Billy Cundiff is a well-known kicker that made a huge mistake in the Baltimore Ravens' attempt for a Super Bowl last year. And this year, they pick him up off the street. This is Billy Cundiff being taken in by the Niners. Your thoughts on a team that, why get two kickers on their squad when they have a guy in David Akers that has some playoff success and was very impressive for the Niners last year? Different story this year.
David Akers had a great season last year. This guy made history. This year he made a 63-yard field goal, which was the only time for the NFL record. So, but he's struggling right now. And I don't want that in a game where it's crucial for us to win. We have to beat the Packers. I want to go to that Super Bowl, and we deserved it last year. We were close. And, I want to go this year. But David Akers cannot make a mistake. Now, when you look at this, we've had this discussion on NFL tonight. I'm going to get heated up about this topic. Billy Cudniff, I believe, can do this.
Yeah, Billy Cundiff picking him up off the street there. Obviously, it's a controversy where you have two kickers that are really just struggling right now in the National Football League. And overall, for this game between the Niners and the Packers, what do you feel will be the key point in changing that game? What will be the one player that will help turn this game around or be the key for the game in two teams that are really hot on offense and on defense really can play pretty darn well?
Probably the corners are probably going to be the biggest one. Probably the secondary for this team. The Niners need to stop Aaron Rodgers in the passing game. I know that's hard. We beat them the first week of the NFL, and no one thought we could. And we did. And it was a tough, crucial game for us. That's how Alex Smith was in. So Colin Kaepernick has no experience at this whatsoever. I wouldn't give him the key for this team. I would say defense. You have Deshaun Golston, Terrell Brown, Chris Culliver, Patrick Willis, Noah Bowman, Almond Brooks, Charles Rogers, Aldon Smith, Dante. I can name all these great players for you. But this D-line has been terrific this year. And, the key is the defense. Stop Aaron Rodgers early.
See, for me, I might go against the grain a little bit here. I agree that, the defense has to step up. That's how it is always in the playoff games. I think if there's one guy who needs to step up, it's a guy that falls under the radar. It doesn't matter if this is on the ground or even in special teams as a returner, because we saw this happen in the Patriot game where it looked like the Patriots had the Niners figured out. And what happened? Well, Michael James breaks out a 60-yard return, doesn't score, but sets them up in beautiful field position. I think they're going to need a special teams boost in this game because it might be the one place that they can catch the Packers napping. If Michael James or even Ted Ginn, whoever the returner may be, I think they need some big plays on special teams in order to win this game.
All right, thank you, Robert, for joining us. Obviously, very quick phone call. Sorry, we're on a tight schedule here. Robert Dieters, thanks for joining us. And also, you can catch Robert Dieters on Spreaker.com throughout the week. He'll be talking about the NFL. He's also on NFL Tonight as well. Me, and Stephen Hughes host that show here. Now we're back to NFL Goal Line, and we are back to divisional round in a few days, and that really is the key over in San Francisco. But overall, for this Green Bay Packer team, they were able to dismantle the Vikings 24-10. But in this game, I see the D-line in the Niners just completely over-talented compared to this Packer offensive line that has given up the second most sacks in the league this year behind, I believe, San Diego. But they've given up a boatload of sacks this year. Now, I know the NFC North, they face twice a year, has tremendous defensive lines. But you mentioned the special teams being a big factor. How much will factor in this offensive line and how much they've struggled? I really, for one game, I'm surprised how well they were able to handle the Vikings' defensive line. Do you feel it'll be the similar story with San Francisco in town?
I definitely think it'll be the wake-up call for the Packers' offensive line. This is a team that, if you do not bring your A game, your quarterback will have to be, surgically unembedded from the turf because they will put him down and, they'll keep putting him there until he stays there. I don't think anybody can argue that fact. This is a Niners team that has bad intentions, every time they step on the football field, every time that ball is snapped and they see who they have to tackle. The Niners defense can easily pose problems for Aaron Rodgers. We've seen it in the past. It's a matter of, can they have a game plan around that to go to their strengths and the few weaknesses of the Niners defense? Because there's been games where they don't show up, where they're not as hard-hitting as they should be. But honestly, I think if you're going Packers offense versus Niners defense, I'll give a slight edge to Niners defense.
And another side note here, throughout the entire regular season, the story for the Niners, now they were already a team ready for the playoffs. You mentioned a powerful defensive line against the Packers' offensive line. How about sticking with that team, San Francisco changing their quarterback midway through the season? Just a quick side note here, both quarterbacks have thrown 218 times. Alex Smith has completed 17 more passes for 3 more touchdowns. Just an interesting side note there. Now we move on to other games around the divisional weekend, staying in the NFC, Seattle and Atlanta, 2 of the top teams in the NFC, but recently the Atlanta Falcons have struggled. And I have been not necessarily bagging this team, but I haven't been high on this team all year long. I don't believe their defense is ready for the show, and I don't believe that their offense, if Michael Turner's shut down, which is pretty easy, just looking at the last few weeks, Michael Turner's been shut down week after week. And if Roddy White is contained, similar situation to Cincinnati, who are the playmakers on this team? Julio Jones is electric, and then they have a bunch of guys that I don't really know. I haven't really heard of. And Atlanta, as powerful as a passing offense that they are, I don't believe that they will be a quick out against a team like Seattle that is very powerful, especially on the defensive side. They're top 5 in that category. Very impressive. And that offense led by that rookie, man, I believe that Seattle will be a really tough out for this team that has been 0-4 in the playoffs, saying for Atlanta ever since Mike Smith has got that job.
Well, I think really the biggest thing that people might not be thinking of, it is on Atlanta's home turf. This is in the Georgia Dome. And if there's ever a time that you need your fans to show up and get loud, it's going to be this weekend, because I think on paper, Seattle might have a better team. Falcons have been the best team record-wise anyway, all year, and they need to start playing like it again. They definitely hit a slump, not being as impressive as earlier in the year. But my reason for liking them earlier in the year was that they were able to win the close game. Seattle proved that they could come back and win a good game last week. I think Atlanta's going to have to dust off that book of winning close games, because this one's definitely going to be a fight, and we're definitely going to see what Atlanta's made of this weekend.
Hey, this is a team. I mean, these are 2 teams that, and I mean, I don't go too much into statistics, but Atlanta is a team that really puts up really great numbers. Seattle is the opposite, a team where there's no denying Russell Wilson is a top 10 quarterback even now. I mean, there are guys obviously miles above him, but, Russell Wilson has done his dues, especially as a rookie. But he hasn't put up nearly the kind of numbers that you'd expect to see. I don't really have too much explanation for the fact why I like Seattle so much, outside of their powerful running game, the number 2 rushing attack in the National Football League. Outside of that, all I can say is Seattle has a very great matchup with their elite corners. They have 2 elite corners in Brandon Browner and their losing the name, but their 2 corners are really elite corners, very tall, very strong, and can match up extremely well against Roddy White and Julio Jones. Outside of those 2 matchups, I just don't have an answer for why I believe Seattle will win this game. All I'm saying is, Atlanta is hot. They had a 13-3 record, and the reason why is because of their elite passing offense and a running game that can really complement that passing game, especially on the goal line. I don't really have an answer for why Atlanta, I believe, will lose this game, but I'm taking Seattle in this matchup. I mean, if we're going predictions, Phil, who do you think will win this game and why?
I think my gut does say Seattle, but as you said, Matt Ryan, Mike Smith, they're 0-3 in the playoffs. If there's ever a time to validate the regular season success that they've had, it would be now. I think they have to give it everything they got. And like I said, we are going to see what Atlanta's made of and if they have enough. Because I think if they don't win after the year they've had now, this is a team that you're not going to believe the hype at all anymore, for the next few years. So I think this is a game. It's just do or die for them. If they don't get past, to them their first round of the playoffs, even when it's the bye, I know they're 13-3, but changes will be made. So really, to keep everything the way they like it, because I'm pretty sure they're totally fine with the coaching staff and everything the way it is now. They got to win this game. I think there's a lot more at stake for Atlanta than people realize.
Changes were made last year also. Last year they were able to retool house. They changed both coordinators in order for hopes to have a better result this year versus last year. Atlanta, I mean, it's all down to this. It's all down to Sunday at 1 o'clock. It'll be broadcast on Fox. Seattle against Atlanta. Winner moves on to the conference championship game. Real quick before we go on to the AFC, Packers and the Niners, who do you think will win that matchup? And a real quick 30-second why.
Just gut feeling. We touched on this a little bit earlier. I think the Niners are going to find a way to do it. The Packers have not really dealt with Colin Kaepernick. I think that might help out a lot. Something they haven't seen before. Even though they did beat him early in the year without Smith, I think it's going to be enough of a little difference to give them the edge.
I'm sticking with you on this one. I believe that the San Francisco 49ers will do what it takes to win that game. Moving over to the AFC, another group of teams that you really can't vote against any one of these guys. Now, it's ensured that Ray Lewis will no longer be the Ravens linebacker following this season, no matter how far they go in the 2012 playoffs. Different story for Peyton Manning. Now, he's not going to be around forever, 37, I believe 16 years in the league, but a similar situation there. They gave this quarterback a 4 or 5 year deal, I believe, but he's not going to play that long. He's 1 to 2 years away from retiring, hanging the cleats up and just calling it quits. Denver's a very talented team, a team that with Tim Tebow, perhaps the worst quarterback to ever start a whole season, played extremely well and was led to the playoffs because of the talent around him. You mentioned teams that really need 3 or 4 receivers that are reliable in order to be an elite offense. They have that in Demaryius Thomas. They have that in Eric Decker. They have that in just so many other targets. Also, that running game, you just plug anyone into that running back position, and they can play well because of that really impressive offensive line. Two teams that really have emotional days coming at their key positions, linebacker and quarterback. The key for this game, Phil, who do you have as being the key for this game in this divisional round of the playoffs?
Well, as you said, the Broncos here, they seem unbeatable at the moment, and you got to dig a little bit deeper than that. But really, I'm just super impressed on what they're doing with this. Denver and Baltimore, this is another situation you don't necessarily want to see, a team lose because both teams have worked very hard to get here. I want to give the slight edge to Denver, but it would not surprise me if Ray Lewis just has a Ray Lewis moment and finds a way to help them pull this one out. I think the biggest deal with the Ravens, what they pulled off last week, was the emergence of Anquan Boldin in a way that we haven't really seen him much since becoming a Raven. He's, channeling his inner Arizona Cardinal, the Pro Bowl receiver he was back with the Cardinals there. I think that's going to be a big moment to see if that's going to be a connection that continues to click with there. I think Anquan Boldin could be the key because they need a go-to guy. They have a lot of very capable guys, but they need one to say, watch him, double-team him, and then make other guys beat him. I think Anquan Boldin could be the do-or-die moment if the Ravens can pull this off.
Now, Baltimore offensively has some very key talent, and Bernard Pierce just emerging in the playoffs. You see that once a year. You see just one team have a player that just emerges. He's the next all-star just with their playoff run. Now, Baltimore, I have to be the biggest fan if they were to move on to the Super Bowl, no matter what they play, no matter who they play. Even if it's perhaps my favorite team in the NFC, Seattle, I'd still be a Baltimore fan. You just have to be a fan of a team that rally around Ray Lewis. Similar situation to Indianapolis, rallying around Chuck Pagano. But the problem is, and football fans, similar to the Monday syndrome, they're all about what they've just seen, what they've seen lately, and they forget the big picture. And the big picture is the Denver Broncos are talented everywhere. They have all the pieces to win now. They are a Super Bowl caliber team. And the Baltimore Ravens, frankly enough, just got hot after one game and are not huge underdogs, but they are somewhat a favorite to some people in this game. I'm just frankly taking Denver in this game because of just how talented they are offensively, that powerful offensive line. And I would perhaps take Baltimore if they didn't have the injuries on the defensive side. They don't have Ladarius Webb for the season. They don't have Elodie Nada. And Ray Lewis, sure, he made 13 tackles that week, but he still isn't the same player he was a few years ago. And not to mention, with the game under his belt, he doesn't have those fresh legs quite anymore. He's almost one of the rest now after one game under his belt. I just have to take Denver in this game because of the injury front, because of I don't believe Anquan Bolden will have more than just that one game success. It's been a very emotional ride for Baltimore, not to mention Torrey Smith losing his brother early on in the year. A very emotional season for him. I just can't take a quarterback comparison where Flacco isn't at the same level by Peyton Manning, not a mile. A mile differential there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think it's going to be the chess match of Peyton Manning versus Ray Lewis. Both these guys know their side of the ball better than just about anybody else, to compare them to at this day and age. I think it's just going to be a constant chess match, and there's going to be one or two big plays that are going to make it different. Again, you can't really pick against the Broncos at the same time. If a team's going to derail them, the Ravens might just be that team.
I would have to agree that Denver, perhaps, in the AFC, I mean, if there's any team that can match up well, it'd be Baltimore because of how powerful they still are on that defensive line, despite Haloti Ngata not being there. And, how can you go against a player in Ray Lewis? I mean, there can't be any stretch run, this playoff run, where one guy is so motivated to winning as a guy like Ray Lewis. 13 tackles in that game. Very impressive. I see him moving it on next week, but I'm hard-pressed to not choose the Broncos in this game. Similar situation to Houston and New England. Sure, the records are pretty much the same. I believe Houston has the same record as New England, if I'm not mistaken. And the other situation here is the fact that their offenses are pretty much self-destructing for Houston, and for New England, it's hitting a all-time high for this year. We're wrapping up here on NFL Goal Line. We'll take a quick minute or two to recap this game. Houston and New England, your key for this game, where the winner moves on to the conference championship game.
I think this one has New England written all over it. That being said, I think it's the perfect time. It's the perfect setup for an upset, I think. Houston needs to be for real. They got to this point last year, too, beating the Bengals in the same situation. It was Matt Schaub's first playoff game and first playoff win. Matt Schaub's in an interesting situation, with TJ Yates getting the playoff win last year. He's a little bit above expendable right now. If they think that they need to make an upgrade or try out TJ Yates, his job isn't as safe as people might think. I think games like this is really going to decide what he's worth. The obvious favor is New England, and Houston knows that. I don't think, Arian Foster, actually, this is an interesting story. On his Twitter page, his default picture is not of him, it's of an article that one of the ESPN writers wrote, pretty much saying how easy of a job New England has to get to the Super Bowl because all they have to do is beat Houston since they had the first round bye, using that as motivation. So really this is a team that's gearing up for the upset, and you got to give the favorite to New England, but Houston's going to give them more, all they can handle.
Boy, that would be a David versus Goliath situation if New England was able to Houston knock off New England. And if our predictions are right, Phil, it would be New England and Denver. Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning, the winner going to the Super Bowl. And if our predictions are right in the NFC, it would be either San Fran and Atlanta or San Fran and Seattle. Looking real quick to the conference championship game, AFC perhaps is most intriguing of a matchup. CBS will be drooling all over New England and Denver. If the Broncos and the Patriots play for the Super Bowl, who are you taking in that matchup?
The Broncos and Patriots play. Earlier in the year, New England did a pretty good job beating up on Denver, but I feel it'd be another situation. I think if they get by Baltimore, I think they're going to find a way to beat New England. I just think it'll add to Peyton Manning's legacy to get to a Super Bowl with his new team, would just cement him as one of the greatest ever. I would have to jump with Denver if that was the case.
I'm going to have to go against you, Phil, and I'm not a fan of disagreement, but I believe New England is the a team that will just make another Super Bowl run, and you just hope that this time they're able to get over the hump and actually win that Lombardi. They've been unable to do it for 8 years. But both these teams, very electric, very exciting, and they will also face off the winner of the NFC, which, if our predictions are right, it'll be San Francisco and either Atlanta or Seattle. If it's San Francisco and Atlanta or Seattle, we'll take Falcons first. Who are you thinking is the winner of that matchup in that side of the conference?
Which game? Which game was that?
Well, let's go San Francisco and Atlanta first.
San Francisco and Atlanta. I think San Francisco is going to have the edge if that's the case. Just this would be in Atlanta. The game will be played in the Georgia Dome. I don't think that would necessarily hinder San Fran. I think they'd be able to fly around the Georgia Dome. I think the defense would be a little too suffocating for Matt Ryan, who's had multiple interception games, multiple times this year, and I think we could easily see one of those again.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I believe San Francisco would be the victor there. If it's San Francisco and Seattle for the conference championship, who would you take in that matchup?
See, that one would be interesting. It'd be two very big defensive slugfests there with Seattle and San Fran. Both these teams have beat each other once this year, so it really, I don't think I could pick that one. It would just kind of be a toss-up as a rubber match between the two division rivals.
All right, let's move on to the Super Bowl here. Let's just think hypothetically here. San Francisco and Denver for the Super Bowl. Who are you taking in that matchup?
That's a tough one. I mean, you think once they get to that point that they got to start putting more on Kaepernick, and the Super Bowl lights might be a little too bright for him at this point. I could be wrong on that, and honestly, I kind of hope I am, because I wouldn't mind seeing the Niners hoist that trophy again. But if it's Peyton Manning and Colin Kaepernick, Peyton Manning is obviously going to rise to the occasion more respectively than Kaepernick.
There's a discrepancy there, that's for sure. Well, there's plenty of situations there. There's 8 teams remaining. There's so many different scenarios. We've seen teams rise from the bottom for so many years that are able to win that championship. That is the ever-elusive Lombardi Trophy. We are here wrapping up on the NFL Goal Line Wild Card edition. We'll be right back, hopefully next Monday night. We'll keep you tuned, keep you posted. We are live on Facebook as well, on the NFL Goal Line on Facebook.com. We are also on Twitter. Tweet us, Facebook us, do whatever you can. Comment us on Spreaker.com. We are signing off here. This is Nick Rice and Phil Annunziata for Wild Card edition of NFL Goal Line. We'll be back 6 days from now for the divisional round of the NFL Goal Line, with more around the coaching carousel in the National Football League and also the divisional recaps and conference championship previews. This is Nick Rice signing off on the NFL Goal Line. So long, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next week.